3D printing, right? Big world. And Bambu Lab, they make that X1 carbon 3D printer that everybody loves. Well, they've been in the news lately, not for like some cool new upgrade or anything though.
Right.
For a firmware update that
Yeah.
well, it caused a lot of drama.
For sure.
A whole lot of drama. We're looking at this Tom's Hardware article here. It's called Bambu Lab. We're not bricking your X1 carbon.
Oh, wow.
So they pushed out this update, Bambu Lab, right? And it's got all these security enhancements. Sounds good, right?
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, sure.
Yeah.
But the 3D printing community, they're known for being pretty DIY, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people like modifying their printers and messing with the firmware.
Yeah.
So when Bambu Lab comes in and kind of like locks things down, it starts to feel like they're building a walled garden.
And people freaked out, right?
Oh yeah.
Like big time.
It was not pretty.
YouTube rants, Reddit threads blowing up.
Yeah.
Even Louis Rossmann, the right to repair guy.
Oh wow.
He got involved.
Yeah, he jumped right in.
So what was it about this update that got everybody so riled up?
I think it boils down to access, right? Like they were restricting access to the core functions of the printer.
Okay.
Bambu Lab's argument was, security enhancing security, but a lot of people saw it as a way to lock out third-party accessories and force people to only use their ecosystem.
Okay, so what about Bambu Lab's response? They put out another blog post trying to kind of, calm everyone down.
They did.
What'd they say?
Well, they went through a whole list of what they called false claims.
Yeah.
Like bricking printers,
Right.
blocking printing capabilities, restricting filament use.
Right.
Some people were even saying that the firmware had like Trojans or back doors in it.
No way.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff.
So what, they denied all of it?
Completely. Yeah. They said there were no timed kill switches, no stealing of 3D files, and absolutely no mandatory subscriptions in the works. Basically, nothing to see here, folks.
Okay, but did the community buy it?
Not entirely.
Yeah.
The Tom's Hardware article, it has some pretty insightful comments from readers.
Oh, yeah.
One person pointed out kind of the irony of talking about tightened security when apparently the private keys and certificates for the firmware got compromised really quickly.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
Not at all. And it makes you wonder, how secure is this update really?
Right, yeah.
And then other people were worried about Bambu Lab's ability to basically change how your printer works, after you've already bought it.
Through these software updates.
Exactly.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It's like you buy something, but you don't really own it.
Yeah.
Because the company can still dictate how it works.
Yeah, that's happening more and more these days with like all kinds of tech.
Yeah, really, you think about what ownership even means anymore.
So they did try to make things better, right? With that developer mode thing.
They did.
What's that all about?
So basically, it gives you full control over the network security settings.
Okay.
Stuff like MQTT, live stream, and FTP. You can tinker with all that.
Isn't that kind of risky for Bambu Lab? Like, what if people mess things up and create security holes?
Oh, it is. It is. And they even say that using developer mode voids your customer support.
Oh, wow.
It's like they're giving power users the freedom they want, but at their own risk, right?
So for those of us who weren't like super deep into the 3D printing world, what is MQTT? Like, why is that important?
Good question. MQTT is it's basically a way for devices to talk to each other.
Okay.
Like a messaging protocol.
Gotcha.
For 3D printing, it's often used for remote monitoring and control.
Okay.
So you could like start a print job from your phone or check on how a print is doing all remotely.
Makes sense.
So by locking down MQTT, Bambu Lab was kind of limiting how people could use their printers. It's all about control, right?
Yeah, it's about who has the control. And it seems like even with this developer mode compromise, people are still worried.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What are they saying?
Well, in the comments on the Tom's Hardware article, you see people questioning Bambu Lab's motives, right? Are they just trying to steer everyone towards using their own ecosystem where they can, collect more data and control the whole user experience?
So a classic walled garden scenario.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, I guess it can be good in some ways, right? It can make things simpler and maybe more secure for beginners. But
yeah.
But you also lose that freedom of choice, and it can feel kind of, trapped.
Right. It's like, do you want a playground with clear boundaries? Or do you want a wide open field where you can explore and do your own thing?
It's a good analogy.
And for a lot of 3D printing enthusiasts, that open field is it's really important.
Right.
They don't want to be limited by, some arbitrary rules or limitations.
So it sounds like Bambu Lab tried to strike a balance, but maybe they didn't quite get it right.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I think they underestimated how much their users value that open ecosystem.
Yeah, and this whole thing, it's not just about Bambu Lab, right? This is something we're seeing more and more across the tech world.
Totally. It's this tension between companies wanting to control their products and users wanting freedom and the ability to customize things.
It raises a lot of questions about, like, what does ownership even mean anymore, In a world where everything is digital.
Yeah, it's a big question.
It's a question we're going to have to explore more in our next segment. But first, let's get into some of the technical details of this firmware update and what it actually means for users.
All right, let's break it down.
Hit me.
One of the big changes is that now you have to communicate through Bambu Lab's cloud servers.
You have to?
Yeah. Before, you could keep your printer offline or connected directly to your local network.
Phew.
But this update, it basically eliminates that option.
So everything has to go through their servers?
Pretty much.
So what does that mean for people?
Well, they're saying it's a security enhancement.
Okay.
By routing everything through their servers, they can supposedly implement better security protocols and protect users from vulnerabilities.
But couldn't you argue that some level of, control is necessary, especially as 3D printing becomes more common, like to protect people?
Absolutely. That's the tricky part here.
Right.
How do you balance security with freedom? And who gets to decide where that line is?
Yeah, those are tough questions.
They are.
And in this case, it seems like the 3D printing community felt like Bambu Lab went a little too far in favor of control.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And it's not just about security either, right? By forcing all this communication through their servers, Bambu Lab is also collecting a lot of data.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
About how people are using their printers.
Right, which, could be valuable for them in terms of product development and marketing.
But it also raises some privacy concerns.
Absolutely.
So it's complicated.
Very complicated.
We've got security concerns, privacy concerns, and then this whole debate about user control versus corporate control.
It's a whole lot to unpack.
And the Bambu Lab case is like a perfect example of how these issues play out in the real world.
It's a microcosm for sure.
And the responses, they've been pretty passionate.
Yeah, it shows you how much people care about this stuff.
And it really highlights, how much is at stake as technology becomes more and more integrated into our lives.
Right.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
We'll dig into those bigger implications in our next segment.
Sounds good.
Right now, let's focus on unpacking the specifics of this firmware update a bit more.
Right, let's do it.
So another big change was the removal of support for third-party filament.
Right.
Like, you can only use Bambu Lab filament now.
Pretty much.
Why would they do that?
Well, they said it's about ensuring consistent print quality and reliability. They argued that by limiting the types of filament, they can better control the printing process and reduce errors.
But, isn't that also a way to control the market? Like, to force people to buy their filament?
That's what a lot of users thought. They saw it as a move towards a closed ecosystem where Bambu Lab would have more control over everything.
Over the whole process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From the filament to the software to the printer itself.
And that, of course, ties back into that whole walled garden idea.
It does.
By controlling everything, they can create maybe a more seamless experience, but it comes at the cost of, freedom and choice.
Right. And the 3D printing community, they weren't really buying it.
Yeah, they like their freedom.
They do.
So it seems like Bambu Lab was trying to walk a tightrope here, and they maybe stumbled a bit.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And this story, it's resonated with a lot of people, and it's not just about 3D printers, right?
No, it's
about these bigger trends we're seeing across the tech world.
Exactly. And the potential implications for all of us as consumers.
It's a reminder that we need to pay attention,
Yeah.
Ask questions and demand transparency from the companies that are making the technology we use.
I agree.
But for now, let's wrap up this part of our deep dive, and then we'll move on to exploring those bigger implications.
I'm looking forward to it.
This is a conversation that needs to be had.
For sure.
Yeah, and we're just getting started.
So this whole Bambu Lab thing, it kind of makes you think, like, what does ownership even mean these days? Like in the digital age.
Yeah, let's talk about that, like the bigger picture.
Okay, so if a company can just, completely change how something works.
Right.
Like something you bought just through a software update. Do you really own it?
Mm.
I mean, this goes way beyond 3D printers, right?
Yeah, it's smartphones, it's smart speakers, cars, medical devices, like everything.
Pretty much anything that's connected and runs on software.
It's like, imagine you buy a car,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the manufacturer's like, nope, you can only drive on these roads now.
Exactly.
And only at this speed.
Yeah.
And they do it all through an update.
Crazy, right?
So what can we do about it? Like, as consumers, are we just stuck?
Well, I mean, it can feel that way sometimes, but there are things we can do.
Like what?
First off, we got to pay attention to those terms and conditions.
Right.
You know, the EOLA's companies bury all sorts of stuff in there, clauses that give them control over updates and how the product works.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of just clicking agree without reading all that stuff.
We all are, right?
Yeah.
They make them so long and boring on purpose.
But you're right. We need to be more aware.
Yeah, maybe we need like better tools or something that summarize the important parts in plain language.
That'd be nice.
But beyond that, we can support organizations that are fighting for a right to repair laws.
Right.
Those laws would give us and independent repair shops
Okay.
the right to, access the information and parts we need to fix our own stuff.
Without having to go through the manufacturer.
Exactly.
Yeah, like Louis Rossmann.
He's a big advocate for that.
Yeah, we were talking about him earlier.
It's funny how this whole Bambu Lab thing kind of ties into that whole right to repair movement.
It does.
The 3D printing community, they've always been big on DIY. So this push towards a more controlled ecosystem, it doesn't really sit well with them.
So it's about raising awareness, supporting right to repair, and being informed consumers.
Right.
But what about the companies?
Yeah.
Like, did they have a responsibility here?
Absolutely. They need to be more transparent about their update policies and how they could, change how a product works.
Right.
And they should give users more choice, like maybe different types of updates.
Okay.
Security updates that are mandatory, but feature updates that you can choose whether to install or not.
That makes sense.
Giving users more control. I think that would go a long way towards building trust.
It's like acknowledging that we're all in this together.
Yeah, it's a partnership.
Not just them dictating everything.
Exactly. And this goes beyond just, 3D printers and software updates.
Right.
This is about like finding the right balance
Yeah.
between innovation and security and user freedom.
In this crazy connected world we live in.
Exactly.
You're right. That's really what it's all about.
Finding a way to move forward without losing the things that made technologies like 3D printing so exciting in the first place.
Yeah, the freedom, the creativity.
Exactly.
So even though Bambu Lab, they tried to clarify things and they offered that developer mode,
Right.
it sounds like there's still a lot of unease out there.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think they did enough to address people's concerns?
I don't know. If you look at the comments on the Tom's Hardware article, it seems like a lot of people still see this update as part of a bigger trend of companies trying to, control their products even after they've been sold.
And that loss of control, even if it's for, security reasons, it can feel kind of like a betrayal.
Yeah, especially for people who are really passionate about, being able to tinker and customize things.
Right, like the 3D printing community.
Exactly. And that's where that whole walled garden analogy comes in.
Right.
Like, yeah, a walled garden can be nice. It can be simple and easy to use, but it can also feel limiting.
Like you're trapped. Like, do
So.
you want to play in a playground with, strict rules, or do you want to explore a wide open wilderness?
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
I mean, both are cool, but it's about having the choice.
Yeah,
right?
It's about having the freedom to choose.
And for a lot of 3D printing people, they're like, we didn't get into this to be told what to do.
Right.
We want to experiment. We want to push the limits.
Exactly.
And we want to do things our own way.
That's the spirit of 3D printing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's about innovation and experimentation.
It's what's made 3D printing what it is today.
It's gone from a hobby to, like, a real technology.
A transformative technology.
With the potential to change, like, everything.
Absolutely.
So what does this mean for the future of 3D printing? Like, are we heading towards a world where all printers are locked down?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Right.
But I think the Bambu Lab situation shows that companies can't just ignore, the people who want openness and freedom.
Yeah.
If they try to control too much, it could backfire.
It could push people away.
Exactly.
So it's a warning sign for other 3D printer companies.
Yeah, and for any company that's that's operating in a space where people really value freedom and customization.
Like the 3D printing community showed they're not afraid to speak up,
They're not.
and they're not afraid to push back.
Right. They showed that users have a voice.
And that voice can make a difference.
It can.
Yeah.
And in a world where technology is, everywhere, it's more important than ever to hold on to that power.
To make our voices heard.
Exactly. We need to be aware of the choices that are being made, the trade-offs, the potential consequences
Our freedom.
for our freedom, for our autonomy.
The Bambu Lab thing, it might seem small,
Yeah,
but it's part of a much bigger trend.
it is.
A trend that's making us ask some really big questions.
About ownership, about control.
About our relationship with technology.
Exactly. And those are questions that we need to answer together.
So bringing it back to Bambu Lab,
Okay.
what do you think they should learn from all of this?
I think they need to rethink how they approach security and user freedom.
Okay.
They need to find a way to make things more secure without, getting rid of that open ecosystem that's been so important for 3D printing.
And they need to be more open with their users.
More transparent.
Yeah, about what they're doing and why they're doing it. It seems like transparency and open communication are pretty important here.
They are, because it all comes down to trust.
Trust.
If companies break that trust, they risk losing the most important thing they have.
Their users.
Their users.
Well said. And that brings us to our final thought for you, dear listener. This whole thing with Bambu Lab, it's been about the physical device, the 3D printer. Well said. And that brings us to our final thought for you, dear listener. This whole thing with Bambu Lab, it's been about the physical device, the 3D printer.
Right.
But what about the digital files? The designs that make those prints possible. Who controls those?
That's a good question.
And as 3D printing becomes more and more common, how do we protect intellectual property rights?
That's a big one.
It's something to think about, as you continue your own deep dive into this whole 3D printing world.
It is. It's like another layer of complexity on top of everything else we've been talking about.
Exactly. And who knows what other exciting and maybe even controversial stuff is out there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Bambu Lab firmware fiasco and all the big questions it raises about the world of tech. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.